Okay. Hi, I'm Lisa Green from the Australian Institute of International Affairs. Retired Marine Colonel Grant Newsham serves as the first US Marine Liaison Officer to the Japan Self-Defense Force. He spoke today at the National Security College Conference on strengthening Australia, Japan and US strategic cooperation. He is here with me to discuss how these countries can deepen their strategic partnership. Welcome.
Well, thank you.
So the first question I'd like to ask is, what regional security opportunities are presented by Australia developing its amphibious capabilities?
There's a lot of things Australia can do with their new amphibious force. For example, they can do HADR, humanitarian assistance operations, just about anywhere. And an amphibious capability fills a gap. As without it, then you're not able to get from ship to shore to help people or to hurt people, as the case may be, and then go back to your ship. You're just not able to do it. So now it opens up a large part of the map that the Australian Defence Force can now operate. Mm-hmm. Also, it allows the ADF to get out and about in the region. You can go anywhere by ship. Yeah. If there's an ocean, you can go. You don't have to ask for landing permission and that sort of thing. You can just go. And it allows them to operate with other countries in the region. For example, with the Indonesians, with the Singaporeans. They can get plugged in with the Americans, the Japanese. It gives them, and doing the amphibious operations actually is different than, say, a squadron flying down to train with somebody somewhere. You're actually there permanently. You can do a lot more, you can take more things with you. It's a very deeper sort of training and relationship that you can build. So it adds to what the ADF can do to both expand its presence and also, if necessary, sort of assert influence and assert power throughout the region.
Okay, great. So what actions can the Japanese Self-Defense Force take to resist Chinese aggression in waters around the Senkaku Islands?
The first thing they have to do is to spend more money on defense. Ultimately, if Japan is not spending the money, it's not serious. Even if Mr. Abe has some good ideas, which he does, and he wants to do the right thing, they need more money. The Japanese defense budget has been underfunded for decades, and as a result, it limits their ability to train, but more importantly, it limits their ability to operate jointly, for the Army, Navy, and Air Force to cooperate and operate together, just the way your three fingers would be able to work in unison. They can't do that. And without that ability, they're hamstrung in what they can do. So the Japanese Navy can go down there, but it doesn't have the air cover. The Japanese Air Force can go down there, but it's not working with the Navy, so it's less than the sum of its parts. So spend more money, figure out how to operate jointly. And ultimately, really to stabilize the East China Sea, that part of it, I think it requires the Americans to get involved. And if you saw American ships, American planes operating directly with Japanese, patrolling the region, exercising in the region, and really establishing a permanent military presence down there, that would deter the Chinese. But on the trend thing, and the trend as it is now, that eventually the Chinese will be in a position really to swarm and just sort of by osmosis absorb the southern islands even. Yeah. So that's worrisome, but it does require Japan to spend more on defense, figure out how to order the Army, Navy, and Air Force to cooperate, and most importantly for the Americans to realize that they have to get in with the Japanese and establish a presence down there.
Right. So on the topic of the United States and Japan cooperating, what change do you foresee for the US Marine Corps stationed in Okinawa under Trump?
That's a good question. Already the Marines have a plan for moving some troops over to Guam, and also making better use of the Darwin facilities. But ultimately, the Okinawa issue is going to require the Japanese central government to take on a noisy Okinawan opposition. They've promised to do this for 20 years. They've promised repeatedly to build a replacement for Futenma Air Station, and the Japanese central government simply has not done it. They're more afraid of these protesters than they are of the United States government. And that's not a good thing for the relationship. But Okinawa, ultimately, it's useful to keep it in perspective. because it's a situation that needs to be resolved. But the more important issue is the ability of US and Japanese forces to operate together. And really to have a very solid linkage. And the US Navy and the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force have this, but you need it with all the services. And if you have this, then that has a stabilizing effect on the region. But Okinawa is basically a real estate problem. Though we should note that the Marines on Okinawa do serve a very important purpose. And if you want to ask somebody who knows, it's the Chinese. And also, we want to suggest that if the relationship cannot withstand the presence of a fairly small number of generally well-behaved Marines on Okinawa, one wonders if the US-Japan relationship would be able to withstand the stress when Americans are actually called on to die for Japan. And I'm not so sure about that. So the Okinawan issue needs resolved, and the central government needs to decide if its promises, multiple promises, are things they should keep.
Yeah. So you mentioned China, but how do you see Japanese and South Korean security relations evolving in the face of the threat presented by both China and North Korea?
I think there's room for some limited progress in the Japan-Korea military relationship. And there's actually been more of a relationship over the years than one is aware of. But the just domestic politics in South Korea being what they are, there's probably limits to how far that will develop, but certainly progress can be made in certain areas. But the political situation inside South Korea is actually very delicate. And it's not well known, but there is a sizable chunk of the sort of the political class and even the population, the younger slice of it, that actually sees North Korea in much more optimistic terms than one would imagine. Additionally, China is pressuring South Korea, certainly in recent times, economically, politically, the usual sort of hectoring that they do, and also the subversion political warfare, in punishment, sort of, or allegedly, over the introduction of the THAAD air defense system. That's really just the latest excuse. But so South Korea is under pressure from China. Internally, there is there's some pro-North Korean elements, for want of a better word, and ones who are less committed or less appreciative of the U.S. relationship. So that causes some instability. And then just the fundamental Korea-Japan relationship. Some people say that the Japanese bring out the worst in the South Koreans. If you want to think of something comparable, think of Northern Ireland. That situation, and how do you explain that sort of thing? So I'd say at best marginal improvements, but so I'm not inclined to hope for too much in that area.
Okay, right. Well, thank you so much for your time. That was fascinating.
Pleasure. Okay.
So for more videos and interviews, please visit internationalaffairs.org.au and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.